Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Innovate Finance, our podcast series where we speak to industry leaders on financial innovation and fintech. Our podcasts are available on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Podcasts. I'm Hayley Bromilow, COO of Innovate Finance, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Lloyd Wahed, founder and CEO at Mana Search. Mana is the leading global fintech and blockchain all-in-one hiring partner. They partner with the most exciting and innovative venture-backed startups across the fintech and blockchain space and pride themselves on nurturing relationships that put diversity, inclusion, and culture at the core. Innovate Finance is delighted to be working with Mana Search as their exclusive hiring partner and partner of our wider skills and talent programme. So, Lloyd, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Hayley.
I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Okay.
So to kick things off, I just thought it would be helpful if you could just tell us a little bit more about your background. What led you in the first place to create Mana, if you don't mind answering that?
Yeah, of course. I'll keep it really brief to start with and save the massive history story. But just after education, went into finance and was really in the investment part of equities, small caps, technology small caps back in the day. This was around 2000. I was the start of getting interested in private businesses that had big ambitions that were scaling, where they were bringing together finance and technology. And around that time, it wasn't called fintech, but it was the starts of solutions and applications that were used mostly at that point in investment. And then through my career, always really had at the core of everything I did, also the convergence of humans and technology. So gone through different companies, whether that was large companies I worked at or a couple that I founded, but always trying to bring together in the financial and technology markets, the hybrid of optimizing human performance through platform technology, and got around to founding the Mana Group 5 years ago, again with the same approach, and I'll leave it there for now.
Amazing. I always find it really interesting learning how people got into the fintech world, because as you say, it was a relatively new term. I know when Innovate Finance was created. So as you say, in existence, but just wasn't called fintech back then. And what does the word Mana mean then?
So Mana can mean many things depending on the interpretation, but the interpretation that the business takes is that it's really your magic, it's your superpower. And in fact, we have a podcast called Searching for Mana, where we are going around industry disruptors, leaders, specialists, and trying to find what their magic is and why they've come to building the type of businesses they have. So it's really at the core of everything in the Mana Group. Now, that's what Mana can mean, simply put. The reason that we chose it for the business was, I think everybody can relate to, we're not a CV. We're not just the sum part of our experience. Of course, that is one large part of why we might choose to do what we do in a career. But I thought underneath the hood, really what you're looking for is that connection of purpose and mission. So we thought Mana was a great brand to get around.
Yeah. Such an incredible story behind that name. I like it every time. Obviously, we've spoken a few times. I love hearing it every time. And can you tell the listeners a bit more about Mana's vision and mission then? What's its purpose?
Yes. So I think that there's been so much brilliant innovation in many different sectors. And I'm not saying there hasn't been innovation that we wouldn't have all experienced within human capital, let's say, broadly speaking. There's obviously great consulting businesses. There is LinkedIn that we all use, but I don't think there's been as much as in other sectors. And I think that it might be maybe the most important thing to innovate. We all spend such a long time in what you could call work, or in a better scenario, one's purpose or one's career, and trying to have the tools and visualize what may be the right type of path might be, I think is so valuable. So again, with Mana, I really paused before setting it up and just thought, well, I can see all this amazing innovation elsewhere. Has this really happened in our space? And I thought, no, not really. So I thought, over the next 10, 15 years, if I can go create a valuable platform in connecting people with missions that really excite them, then there'd be a massive return on an investment. It's a tricky path because we've got so many different sides to the equation. We've got, candidates in their employment, we've got clients driving their companies, partnerships, and many different things. So it's a broad ecosystem, and there really is 1,000 dots to try and connect. But that's part of the fun of the challenge as well.
Yeah. And that, as you say, it's so core to what you do, because that's why you don't call yourselves like a recruitment agency or something like that. You are very much that hiring partner, because you want to see how you nurture these partnerships, which I know is so crucial to the work you do, and why we chose you as our partner for this.
Yeah, so exactly, Hayley. So that might be one of the more challenging things we did. I'm very early in the journey of trying to get amazing at this, which is actually, if you set up a technical recruitment business, and I'm not saying it's not really hard, but it's one focus. Yeah. It's, get a database of technical individuals and then get that type of role in a company. And there's a very kind of like transactional way to make that really valuable and profitable. Now, if you take an executive search business, it's quite different. It's a different type of person who's working in that organization. And it's almost like a black art in terms of how to, operate at the top level of that type of search. To bring these two things together is tricky, because you're bringing two different cultures into your organization. And then we wanted to bring a third thing into it as well, which is why we started with Mana Lab, sponsoring research with Imperial College to try and look at the design engineering of the best process. And again, the thesis was companies will do more and more of their own internal hiring, and rightly so, because, if we think of some of your members, Hayley, like Monzo, they've got an incredible brand. They can get a huge flow of talent coming into that organization. And then there is a load of mastery around the selection of who's going to suit that culture and be an optimal fit, along with every now and again, you're going to get a role where people haven't flowed in, and you're going to have the skill to reach out to that individual. So the individuals who've tried to solve that typically have been from Silicon Valley. And what we saw is they've come with pure tech plays, or you've had traditional professional service plays. And I don't think it's the way to provide the best platform for this particular type of market. So we brought together technology platform, a recruitment business, and a search business. That's been very challenging, but ultimately I think that's where the solution's going to come from.
Yeah. And that is your USP, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
Which makes you such great partners. So let's obviously, we've spoken about culture a few times now. So let's just dive into that topic in particular. I mean, looking at Mana itself, but also the companies that you work with, what are the top key things that you need to consider when building a company that puts culture at the core? Is there, any top tips you can share?
Great question, Hayley. So I think that culture can be considered such a soft thing, or has been, and therefore to answer this generically just isn't going to work. What we always recommend is thinking, what is the company that you're building, or who are your customers, whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C. But I use a B2C example so we can all relate to it, although I know your audience will be able to relate to most things. If you think of somewhere like Airbnb, then what are Airbnb trying to do? There's this very famous story where the founders kind of said, like, well, what's our service right now? Is it 7 out of 10? What would get us to 9 out of 10? And then let's dare to dream what an 11 out of 10 experience might be. And like, from the most basic version of this, it would be you go to rent a room in a particular geography that you're traveling to, and that experience is okay, right? You manage to get the room, you can get into it. When you're there, it's relatively clean, you come away. I don't know what this is. Let's say 5 out of 10. Well, what's an 11 out of 10 to jump to that one is, when you get off the aeroplane, a limousine turns up, you're escorted into it. Your favorite drink is in the limousine. You turn up to the property, and most of the time when you're traveling somewhere, what's next is, but what do you actually then get to do? Like, is it really well curated? Do you get the locals top tips on where the nicest restaurant might be, and you're coming away with this wonderful 11 out of 10 experience? And so in their culture, everything has to be that people are insanely passionate about that experience for their customer. So in their offices, as a interesting visual, they turn the meeting rooms into actual Airbnbs.
They do that.
Yeah, the meeting rooms were mock-ups. I mean, it wasn't the actual Airbnb and cut it out of a building and bring it in, but mock-ups of those exact spaces. And it did tiny little thing like that makes you visualize the culture that you're in and understand what is the customer actually caring about. Because it can be quite easy, as I'm sure we can both relate to sometimes get sidetracked on tasks and taken away from what are you trying to experience. So with Mana, what is incredibly important to us? What's incredibly important to us is a couple of things, as I've said, that are coming together. But let's just say, broadly speaking, is that people are having, massive purpose in their career. Yeah. And so we are, beyond, I don't know what the right word here is, but enthusiastic about always talking and sharing when we're seeing best examples of this. And so when we then get to talk to a candidate, and it does not matter, and this is very different to most search firms, right? That they're at any particular level, then we really do an interview almost like this, where we go back to, their experiences, we try and understand their drivers, and we really try and get into their shoes and think, what is the right thing to do? How are they going to have a compelling next step? And then combined with the space. So we try and be just as enthusiastic as on the candidate side and the psychology that goes with that, to being completely present in the space. So with fintech, that's why it's such a pleasure to be partnering with someone like Innovate Finance and working with you, Hayley. We try and absorb everything that's going on from a news perspective, events perspective, just live and breathe it. And you get to a point very quickly where you kind of can't remember how you met people, but actually your peer group are the people who are in and building this space. And it just becomes such a pleasure. So again, I'm sure that we need to do more as ever for our culture. And I'm, by the way, definitely not saying it's all been rosy. We've been pretty good at building other cultures, but to build our own one has been the trickiest thing. And we have to get it 11 out of 10. So there's, I probably at some point need to start putting mock-ups of other companies in our meeting rooms or something and learn from Brian Chesky. But yeah, no, we're trying our best. And it's just the point there to anyone listening is something has to be really strong in your culture that defines what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, as you say, all together with the same end goal and passionate about getting there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess, that it's almost a bit of an expectation for Mana and your employees, because you talk about it so much that there's that added pressure to get it right. I have no doubt you're doing a fantastic job, though. So, I mean, talking a little bit about kind of your own experience and yourself as a founder, I mean, how has the scaling journey been for you since creating the company?
It's been amazing. I think that I try and ground myself in a constant, if that makes any sense, which isn't some wishful thinking that suddenly the pressure is going to go up or down. The scale changes northward in terms of the jigsaw puzzle, but then in many ways another challenge will present itself. Over the last few years, working with many partners where they've had incredibly challenging situations, whether from the outside perceptionally they're incredibly successful or not. I'm in a fortunate position to understand that the founder of the company where they're worth billions and billions of pounds and they look like they've got it all sorted, has got some challenge on their desk right now and also has some upside opportunity. And it's just, therefore, at some point, you've got to say to yourself as a founder, but I prefer this because I'm so excited about what we're building. And, I'm looking forward to this very week that we're in. So possibly the lesson that I had to learn, I founded other companies previously. And very early on, I think, put everything on myself. And, at one point, I literally collapsed from the pressure that I had on me in that organization at that point. And perhaps what I've done, of the very few things that maybe I've done okay, was with this business, surrounded myself with just a few absolutely crucial people. And that has been just the most invaluable thing. We're really lucky at Mana to have Antonietta as our COO and many other things, Heather as our chief people officer and many other things. We have Dan, who's a partner and one of the greatest headhunters in the whole space, who's been there from day one. We have Mimi, who set up Mana Lab, and we have Alessandro, who's the MD of the core search business. There's a group now, so I won't keep going on, but we've got it to a point now where I was away at an event at the end of last week, and the week before I was at an event. And I think those kind of first years where you're having anxiety around, oh my God, are these tasks going to still carry on moving forward? It's now just the surprise that they're moving forward much better than they would if I was doing them. But I get to have like the wonderful situation where we all have a trust and respect for the things that we can bring to it. So again, to the point of what Mana's doing for other companies, which is bringing those founding teams together, bringing those organizations together, hiring people who really engage with the mission. That has been the hardest thing, but we definitely got to a point where I had that team in place. And so whatever the challenge is, to be able to do it with those several other people makes it water off a duck's back.
Yes. And obviously you'll know this only too well, that it's, the people that make the businesses at the end of the day. You can have the best idea, but if you haven't got those people behind you to help champion it and drive it forward, then you won't get it to where you want it to be. So all about the people, and I can vouch that you have wonderful employees because I've worked with many of them. So good team. So obviously, I mean, you're close to kind of the work piece and culture and people. Through COVID and the way we're working now has changed somewhat since kind of pre-COVID times. What do you think is the future of work, and any particular trends that you're seeing when you're working with these different companies?
Yes, so huge topic and fascinating, and we are really trying to work this out the whole time. So we have a big commitment with Mana Lab that's focused from research and development to the future of work, and always going around and trying to see best examples of what's happening. So to start with some type of thesis, I think that there's a lot of talk around right now, particularly, and there's been more over the last few years around artificial intelligence. So what does this mean for us? And the classic knee-jerk is that this will be some type of displacement of professionals. And that hasn't previously, you go back to industrialization or innovation, previously actually been the case. What's happened is there might be some pain in the short term, but then actually it creates more opportunity. I make no pretenses that I have anywhere near what an outcome could be here, but I have read a really fascinating take, which I think is possibly the type of thesis that might come true, from an individual called Daniel Susskind, who wrote around the future of work. And we can maybe we can share the book in the link if anyone's interested. And his take is written in a really fun style to read through because he's using history, which is great. But he's saying maybe it's not this, it's 0 or 1. Maybe it's not that suddenly everything's going to go and we're going to have to just find ourselves, consuming entertainment because there'll be no jobs anymore. Or maybe it's not that suddenly, we're all going to be disparately better at what we do because artificial intelligence is going to make us so much better. What it might be is a slow burn to a changing environment where less people are replaceable, and those people who are less replaceable will be much more in demand. So if you start looking at that, and then if you look at the type of space that we're in, which is, if we use fintech, it's this relatively ambitious, driven individuals who are on the cusp of technology and finance. I think that this is probably incredibly good for anybody who's in that space with, with a real core skill set. Now, what this means more generally for the whole world is a much bigger debate, but to keep it in that zone, because that's the zone that I and Mana try to look at, I think it's going to be really healthy for us. But I think that the thing that most people are aware of is you want to suddenly move to an attitude of consistently trying to upskill and learn because things move rapidly now. So if we take this back to one's career, it's really great to start seeing access to these educational tools becoming lower barrier to entry. It doesn't rely on you physically necessarily to go to some type of institute. And so I think it's in a mindset. That would be my way of thinking around things. The way to navigate yourself over the next several years is in the mindset of definitely not being stagnant, definitely absorbing, okay, that looks like a fad, or is it a trend? Okay, if it's a trend, is it something I'm interested in? How can I get good at learning and upskilling myself into that? And then if we more broadly look at the future of work, there's just so much brilliant innovation coming into it. And it might not be that big topic that I've just spoken about. So, for instance, we partner with a platform called Deel, DEEL, and it's an amazing rocket ship. You could probably call it a fintech. And again, it's one of those things that you might not have necessarily thought through was going to happen, but is so beneficial now that it has. So what happened in work is people distributed over this last era. And what was one of the advantages for an organization is you can employ people from different territories, right? But then with that, there becomes huge legal and legislation and regulatory challenges around it. And what Deel in real brief has gone and done is created a platform where you can employ these individuals through their platform, so you can get access to that talent pool. And they've gone around taking a lot of the pain away from you doing that for an incredibly reasonable amount to do it for. And so for me, that's massive. That is suddenly thinking, well, not all the great companies might now be built in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And I just think it shows you how big the future of work can be. The space I'm, no bias here, most excited about is where fintech is colliding with the future of work. I think this next 7 years is going to be just an absolute mega trend.
Yeah. And we're definitely excited to see where it's going to go. I think as well, to that point, which we often hear, that there are so many jobs in the future that don't even exist now. So actually, to your point about upskilling, reskilling, etc., that people may be worried that AI is going to take over, certain jobs, but actually there are jobs in the future that people will go into that we don't even know about yet. It's just all part of the development and the progress, isn't it? So it's definitely going to be, as you say, an exciting few years to see the trends that come to fruition. So you talk a little bit about your partnership with Deel, and I know you have other exciting partnerships within the fintech space, the likes of Tide, ClearPay, Free Trade. Can you tell us just a little bit more about these partnerships, what they entail, and kind of other partnerships you have in the fintech space?
Yep, of course. So no partnership that we're greater excited about than Innovate Finance, Hayley.
Thank you.
Obviously, I'll give an example that I think I can talk about, because it's become relatively public recently. And that is one that we have with names. So this is really so close to why I set Mana up. It's so exciting. And the whole group is in partnership with this organization. So just for a little context, Names is the first regulated reinsurance crypto business. They were founded with the early support of InsurTech Gateway, and Dan, who is the founder, who is a goofy, awesome dude, ex catwalk model, likely candidate for this, for reinsurance play. Just did some brilliant work for a period of time, and then came to us and needed to build out various individuals within the team, and like to the kind of like stage that they're at now, which is an organization with tens and tens of amazing people into it. We've kind of partnered on bringing the chief operating officer and an awful lot of the team, and they've done some of that themselves, like they rightly should. But then we started wanting to partner in, other ways also. And so Mana is very fortunate that it's got this ecosystem. So one of the things that we can do overall are potentially connect people with their next investors. What we're able to do is potentially introduce people to, enterprise partnerships. And what we're able to also do is, various levels of promotion. So the Searching for Mana podcast that I talked about, which at the moment is sponsored and in partnership with the London Stock Exchange, which is another cool partnership that we've just got going with. We were talking to Dan about getting him onto the show, and he's like, well, look, just like with everything else that we've partnered on, why don't we go a level beyond that? And he's like, I quite want to do a podcast also. So they have produced The Missing Link, and their play is really to disrupt Lloyd's of London. So we were happy with it, because it wasn't just, this is one company who's going to come on and mainly kind of talk about themselves in overt ways. Much like with this, Hayley, you have an ecosystem. You're a good neutral party to host a platform like this, which is kind of what we think Mana might be with Searching for Mana. And we thought, well, they would be too. And actually, they could speak to the insurance community way better than us, because they're so knowledgeable and deeply entrenched into it and know more people than us. So we've just released The Missing Link through the Searching for Mana platform as the first podcast. That's another, organization coming onto it. And we're now talking to others about doing the same thing. So I think it's just a great example of like this topic of partnerships. I had zero thought that would be the outcome of this relationship. But, you get going. And so the more amazing people who are on their own journey, but you're sharing that journey together, that you kind of, think of adding value to, and they add value to you. Just that serendipity suddenly starts like spiking northwards so much. And that partnership has been such a brilliant example. So I'm advisor now with Names.
Yeah.
I know some of their team just as well as I might know some of my own team. Am I as excited in Names being monumentally successful as Mana? I just don't know. It's all the same thing for me now.
Yeah.
So it's an example of when partnerships, I think, go really well. And the thing that I just underscore, sorry, I know I'm waffling quite a lot, but it excites me, is that was very much reliant on them really buying into why a high level of engagement into the partnership would be so good. We've never had a good partnership where the other side didn't come at us as much as we've come at them, equally drive it, and come up with ideas. And we've come up with ideas like just basically liberating away the barrier of like, oh, it's a partnership. Is this going to be this? What do we get out of this? Yeah. I've never seen that work. But what those guys did so amazingly is, for whatever reason, backed us. went fully in, and then what's come from it, I think, is this really beautiful partnership.
That's amazing. Yeah, as you say, a real true partnership where you both bring, equal amounts of value to the table. So I guess obviously you've spoken a little bit about that and other partnerships that you have in place. What's next for Mana? Anything else that you want to share with our listeners that's coming up?
Yeah, so I mean, I could go on for a long time, but I'll try and keep it brief. So genuinely excited about this Innovate Finance partnership. Love to get to meet with all the members that we might not have. And very much the starting point of that is just to introduce ourselves to your members and be there as a soundboard. And then, hopefully see if there's any connection with any of them, which I'm sure there would be. Two other things really that are super, super exciting at the moment. So one, we also work in the blockchain space, which very much financial technology took us into exchanges and DeFi, and then it broadened out from there. And some of the most exciting things I'm seeing right now is this 2.5 zone where you've got fintechs partnering with Web3 businesses, which is working incredibly well. If you take examples like, let's say, Sardine, for instance, or MoonPay. So in that space, we've struck a bunch of partnerships with some of the foundations. And I would say, if there's not many good search or recruitment or hiring partners in fintech right now, well, then in blockchain, there's basically almost none. So, so we're very excited to be walking into relationships with, Binance, which is the largest exchange in the space, and a number of the other foundations and a lot of the Ethereum ecosystem. And so, just getting into that space right now is so exciting. And I think the scale of that is absolutely massive. And what I would say they're doing well that fintech, I think, can probably follow is it's just, again, that openness of collaboration. So it's very natural in Web3 for different companies to immediately be partnering, on Discords with each other. And I think that fintech, and this may well be because it was very much from a regulated environment and just wasn't quite as extremely kind of decentralized as Web3. But the benefit of those partnerships in Web3 that I've seen is so great. So we're going to be trying to share these techniques into fintech as well. And the final thing really is Mana Lab that I talked about. So Mana Lab now has kind of hosted its first online courses, and then also first in real life event a few weeks ago. And the demand is just overwhelming. So we've managed to get some of the most ambitious students who are really keen to, work on projects in fintech and blockchain. And so the Mana Lab is creating a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, in partnership with Tezos, who are helping us to do this. And we're going to try to manage this culture, really with the students leading it, because I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm so excited about being able to liberate that. What I can see is the demand is massive. What nobody knows is how to perfectly manage a culture through a DAO. But again, because we're so excited about how massive DAOs could be, then the mentality is, well, let's learn by getting involved into it, and let's do it with a part of the business where clearly it will just add value. And so that's the next thing, and there'll be some announcements coming out quite shortly about that.
You have a busy year ahead. There is lots on. But it all sounds fantastic. And we are as equally delighted to be partnering with you. And for all the members listening that aren't connected to Lloyd and the team at Mana, please do reach out to either your Innovate Finance account manager or Lloyd directly, because, they are a company to know. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And please do keep an eye out for all our upcoming episodes. All of our previous episodes are available on our website, so please take a look at our catalogue for many more insights on fintech and financial innovation. Thanks once again to our guest today, Lloyd, founder and CEO at Mana Search, and thank you all at home for listening. Join us next time for Coffee with Innovate Finance. Bye for now.